Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have the expert Erin Rapaki. She's a technical marketing professional with more than 15 years of experience in robotics and industrial automation. Welcome, Erin. Super happy to have you here.
Thank you. My name is Erin Rapaki. I also got married recently, so I go by Erin Bishop. But if you look up Erin Rapaki, there's probably more Google hits. I've been talking about robotics for 15 years now. I started off actually in high school, being very involved in a program called FIRST Robotics. And FIRST Robotics is a high school STEM robotics program available to many students around the world. And I certainly encourage if any parents are listening to this podcast, or if any kids are, and you want to get involved in robotics, start with FIRST. That's FIRST. So I was doing that in the early 2000s and got very interested in robotics, very excited about it, and went and studied robotics at university. Went to Northeastern in Boston, helped with the robotics team, helped start events, and then got my master's in mechanical engineering in a human robot interaction lab. And HRI, human robot interaction, it's really interesting because it combines psychology with technology. How does a person interact with a device or interact with a machine? And maybe people who make smartphone apps or software think of it as first HCI, like human computer interaction, or UX, user experience design. But human robot interaction really takes in the affect and the behaviors of the robot to a whole new level. Because if a robot looks too real and is not quite there all the way, it gets into the uncanny valley. So that was my master's. And then wanted to move to Silicon Valley and do robot startups. It was very intentional. I was nervous. I gave myself 3 months after grad school. I gave myself a 3-month window to go try to find a job at a robot startup, and only focused on that, and managed to get one. And this was 2009, 2010. Robotics was not that abundant. And I ended up at a company called AnyBots over in Mountain View, California. Coincidentally, the CEO of AnyBots was also a partner at Y Combinator. And so many startups have heard of Y Combinator. I'm 24, 25 years old, moving to Silicon Valley for the first time, working in the same building as the Y Combinator meetings, and really getting a fast dose of Silicon Valley startup land. so that was how I ended up in California. And then the past 10 years, I've consistently been working at robotic startups and trying to really figure out what's the truth, what's really happening, what's a useful product, what's the market want, and also following the technology curve, which has been very, very interesting to watch the past 10 years. Because there was a lot less robotics technology 10 years ago, and now it's just flourishing.
10 years in California, from going in a university and then jumping into all of the Silicon Valley startups and robotics full time. And then I noticed that you had an expertise in marketing, and then you jumped into product management. Like, how was that transition? Because you were a mechanical engineering and then you jumped into marketing. So how was that like?
So I think I went, if it wasn't for FIRST Robotics, I definitely would have gotten a business degree in college. So I always knew I had a business acumen. I just felt it. But, and I'm very grateful for this, because I did robotics in high school, I realized that opportunities become very interesting with engineering degrees. Like, an engineering degree does not prevent you from having a role in business later. And in fact, an engineering degree teaches people a language. So I can speak with engineers, I can speak with technologists, I can speak with manufacturers, but really the engineering degrees are about a language. And also somewhere in there, I learned a bunch of math and forgot it, but I can follow what my technical teams are saying. But I didn't know that the word product manager existed until I reached Silicon Valley in 2010. I heard the definition and I knew, oh, that's me. The brain between business and engineering. who's writing the requirements, who's validating the customer needs, who's guiding engineers into what to build and why. Is what they're building meeting business goals? So that's what a product manager does, is really make sure the market is receiving a product that's actually useful to them, and making sure engineering is building a useful product that the market actually wants.
Mhm.
And because there's different languages or just different, it's a big job to be a product manager. And so I was a product manager, and then wore the product marketing manager hat, where I was doing both product management. And it was early. This was at Adept, and I was one of the first people to write a product spec for the small autonomous mobile robots. This was 2011. And we were one of the first people to, I was one of the first people to run those mobile robots around a trade show in the aisles and get in trouble. so, yeah, and the engineers are doing their job and thinking about, how do I bring this together with technology? How do I do the design and build and quality control? So they need to be given requirements from the business team. And then product marketing, I was defining the specs for engineering, and then it was early, the product was not quite ready yet. So it was appropriate for me to have both roles, where I'm doing trade shows, writing content collateral, writing web content, and really understanding the target audiences. And the marketing side also came naturally, because when I'm excited about a technology, I'm an evangelist. That part comes naturally. So that's how I transitioned a bit from engineering into marketing. And 2015, 2016, I was doing the CEO of actually a billionaire. He's the billionaire who funded Willow Garage and Ross back 10, 15 years ago. I worked directly for him for his telepresence robot company. It was called Suitable Technologies. The product was called Beam. Anyone who walked down University Ave in Palo Alto between 2015 and 2018 saw a Beam store and saw people driving robots around the sidewalks of Palo Alto, kind of chasing people and saying hi, which was pretty hilarious, and certainly a unique way of selling. More famously, in 2014, Edward Snowden used one of these telepresence robots to give a TED talk. And so he drove out on stage and was able to have full presence at TED under his own agency. He was able to drive around and talk to whoever he wanted to talk to.
Wow.
So that was a full-time marketing role. But again, I needed to interface with engineering in order to understand what to say. So they all touch on each other.
Okay, really interesting. I mean, I think most of the time, whenever we think about engineering or like technical stuff, we do not see how it relates with, I don't know, psychology, marketing. But marketing has to do everything with needs. So in order to sell and to have some kind of income, you have to understand the client needs. So I think this special role that you had for the last couple of years, it's really interesting, because I was reading an article of yours back in 2011, and you were saying something about how we need robots to be boring. So can you explain a little bit? And what do you think after 11 years? Because this is amazing.
Well, it's funny because I take a keen interest in safety standards and how to shift the safety standards for robotics. So I'm interested in robots that do meaningful work. I'm not a toy robot person. I kind of don't really do that. I want big robots that carry things or do construction or dig holes or inspect things. These big robots can really wreak havoc and seriously damage a room that they're in. And so boring robots, I wrote that article because I was frustrated that so many reporters were writing this robot is cool, this robot does this silly thing. And I actually started my Twitter account, Robot Diva. I started that in 2010, because I was frustrated. Okay. I saw very few robotics articles of actual substance. And, the general population will think robots are a kitschy, fun, weird thing with some gimmick, or they're afraid of Terminator. And that's not the reality on either side. So I wanted to really surface the articles that I felt had integrity. Robot doing farming, robot helping kid go to school, robot like save, like people don't have to break their backs unloading trucks anymore, robot unloading trucks. So I really wanted to use my Twitter account to say, like, real robots are tools, they're pieces of equipment, they're boring, they're not some spectacle, they're just reliably doing their thing all the time in a safe way. And that's why I wrote that article.
And I mean, after 11 years, do you feel like this has changed? Because at the end of the day, you might still hear people saying like, oh my God, robotics, and they might be afraid of the topic. And on the other side, we have people who are, who have this mentality of like robots, it's going to be a natural thing, right? And it's going to be on a daily basis for us, and it's going to be natural. So what do you think that your perspective regarding this has changed?
I think there's a lot, I'll put it this way. When I'm doing product market fit research for robotics, I don't trust anything online. So you either have the robots are cool reporters, or you have sponsored content from different vendors, or you have market research reports that I believe most of them are getting it wrong. So I might be doing a tangent from the question, but I think it's impossible for the majority. I don't think there's anyone in the maybe I'm one of few, but the general population has the wrong idea of robotics. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't blame them, but one of the things I want to do, and I'm kind of working on a book to do this, is reorient the conversation about robotics.
Okay.
Like, this is why these things are being developed. This is what they can do. This is what they can't do. Because I know a lot of people are afraid about robotics and the future of work. And I see different trends, macro trends that, some people will say I'm saying this just because I'm a roboticist, but labor shortage is here. The whole globe wants more goods and services. And we can't have a human society where a small people who want to consume a lot of goods and services are supported by a bunch of low-wage manual workers. And in fact, what's good is people don't want those jobs anymore. They're terrible jobs. And so my approach is the robots are productivity tools that help increase the productivity and also do the physical side of the labor. That being said, these robots need to be watched. They need to be handled. They need to be managed. There will be workers in the room with the robots, because the robots will fail maybe 2 to 5% of the time. And a worker will need to intervene to get the thing out of the way, or push it into place, or reboot it. That's 100% necessary. But instead of the worker lifting every brick, the robots, the robots doing the majority of the heavy lifting. And when I like looking at the automotive industry as a example of this, if you look at the automotive industry in the US, except for 2 years in the 80s, which a lot of bad stuff was going on, the entire automotive industry always increased in workforce. These workers always increased in wages. However, just the productivity also went up with the introduction of robots. Many more workers were introduced, but more cars were produced per worker. And this is what happens when you have market growth. And right now, our automotive factories have extreme labor shortage issues. So I'd say if somebody wants a job in manufacturing, they can go get it. And a lot of places are willing to train an apprentice. I was actually just at the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin, and they're willing to apprentice. They have a really great apprenticeship program over there. So there's a lot of jobs, and in manufacturing, it's not dull. You're not in a sooty, terrible brown building. You're in a bright lit, clean building full of computers. That's what manufacturing looks like today.
Wow. Wow. I mean, from someone outside of the industry, this is completely surprising information. That's what I will say.
That's what I want people to know.
Yeah, and that's good. And that's why we have this podcast for. I mean,
great.
People inside the industry, experts talking about what's going on in today's world, right? Mm-hmm. So thank you, Erin. This is amazing. And now I wanted to ask you, like, what are you doing right now? I know that they are consulting for startups and investors. How is that market in today's world?
So I switched between full-time roles and consulting. I started Machine Inbound in 2017. Because if you look at my resume, you'll notice there's a lot of roles on there. And what was going on is I would join an early stage robot startup, help with product market fit research. Maybe we fundraise, maybe I go validate some information. Maybe there's one customer who's our first customer, but then the engineering team needs to go build it. And that takes a year or two. And I was actually getting laid off and I got discouraged. And maybe the more important story is I have the career I have right now because I was very intentional and very much fighting to get it. Honestly, my first 5 years of my career was fighting just to get the word robot on my resume as much as possible. And my biggest skill now is I know how to fight. but I like to encourage anyone listening that if you have a professional passion, or what I like to call a North Star, if you choose a place you want to go or want to be in life, and you're always taking small steps towards that, you will get there. It might take a while, but diverging from your North Star means you don't get there, you get there slower. But if you keep trying to crawl back in, claw back in, get that job on your resume, just take what you can, it can build up. And I'm enjoying that now. It looks like it all makes sense looking back, but honestly, I was in the moment and very intentional and fighting for it every step of the way. So anyway, I noticed I kept getting laid off, and I realized that perhaps this kind of work is better done as a consultant. And I was kind of eager to start my own business. I was also a little eager to do some travel. So I wanted to part-time travel and part-time work for a little while. I started Machine Inbound as a market research and a marketing agency for robotics and tech companies. Wow. I noticed that many teams with fantastic technology were just terrible at marketing, and it was unnecessary. And somebody needed to, like, there's engineering tech leaders. I love engineers. Sometimes they think they know everything from watching an ad. I don't know. I'm like, but I kind of had the role, like, I'm an engineer. I'm going to explain professional digital marketing to you.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And because I understood their technology and understand their use case and understand their customer base, I could take things off their plate. I'm like, no, I'll write the documents, I'll write the blogs, I'll write the copy. I know what the audience needs to hear. And I started selling that service or portions of those services as consulting projects. I'd say more recently, I've been following more of a technology interest because I've been talking about and ranting about robotics for a long time. And I actually want the robots to work as soon as possible. I see labor shortage, demographic inversion, sustainability issues. We can't just go chase low-cost labor pools around the planet anymore. So the question is, how's our stuff going to get made? Like, really? Who's going to pick our food? Who's going to produce that? So all of these places have labor shortage. And you look at the really large global demographics. The good news is the world is getting wealthier. The bad news is nobody wants to do manual labor for low wage. We need livable wage for manual laborers, even a better. Manual laborers deserve a lot of money. They're breaking their backs for us. But I see it as urgent that the robots need to start being functional, like actually doing far more than they can do today. But I took a technology interest. So I joined a LiDAR 3D camera company for 2 years. And that was 2 years of conversations about computer vision pipelines with different robotics companies, many different robotics companies. And afterwards, I realized most of them did not have a programming environment for complex computer vision applications. So now I take a very strong interest in simulation. So I've had my consulting for the past year and a half. I've been helping robot startups write their investor decks. I've been helping private equity funds with due diligence on robot companies. All this is writing reports and doing research on the industry. But I've also been doing marketing and business development for a simulation business, somebody who uses the Unity, Unreal, and NVIDIA game engine environments to digitally twin a robot into the game engine, then test that robot against scenarios in the game environment. Probably the best analogy for that, for somebody completely getting introduced to this, is self-driving car companies were testing their cars in video games like Grand Theft Auto. And you're kind of much better off having a video game puppy running across the road to check that the car will see it and stop. You want to be doing that in the virtual. You want to be doing that in a game engine. You don't want to do that test in real life. So those are the kind of scenarios, these very bad, long tail, difficult to test scenarios. You want to test them in game engines to see if the robot's programming does what it's supposed to do. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm very much invested and interested in simulation tools for robotics.
And it looks really interesting. It looks like kind of like a new market, if we can put it like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm trying to find the right metaphor. It is so new. And with meta and multiverse stuff, many people are having the conversation. What's the multiverse? What's virtual? And I think simulation, I'm going to try this metaphor out, but I think simulation is really the browser of robotics. You can put the environment in there, you can put the robot in there, you can connect things together. If there's other things in the environment, you can build a digital twin and model it. You can actually have the entire working environment of the robot built up in the digital, and then and that helps program it, that helps test it, that helps design it, and can help operate it. You can actually be looking at the twin and saying, oh, this robot's stuck over here. Do I need to retrieve it, or can I tell it just to do like an emergency return to its dock? And that 3D environment will be very, very powerful I think it's honestly, all of robotics is currently stuck right now, including self-driving cars, in a current technology paradigm. And it's not good enough. It needs simulation to train and test against different types of scenarios and more highly variable environments. I think simulation is 100% necessary to unlock the future of robotics.
Simulation. And what do you think it will be the best way in order to start solving this problem? Like nowadays, if you were to give, I don't know, like really young people interested in the topic, any advice regarding how to jump into robotics in order to make a change, what would you say to them?
Honestly, what simulation does is it's a video game design problem. So, and there are tools you can, I think First Robotics, I think Universal Robots. If you look up, I think Unity and Unreal have little packages, NVIDIA has little packages. I don't know how young, but I think a young person could certainly go build up a game environment and there are packages out there for them to run a robot. Some of the earlier simulation tools called Gazebo or actually Turtlebot, I think, is a ROS-based educational robot. That's a good start. And the more they're modeling inside game engines, and the more sophisticated stuff is connecting code to models, and then connecting code to models, and then having that model in the game engine pick up and drop an object 100,000 or 1,000,000 times to learn grasp positions. Then, you can actually, in theory, port that same code that the model figured out back into the robot. So I think it's going to be easier for kids in the future to become roboticists. And in fact, if it becomes too easy, I hope the kids still take time to build robots, get into the weeds of how it works. Because I've noticed this with people who have worked on computers. It's very easy to build a website these days, but the folks who have been around a while and really understand the embedded code behind the internet or computers, programming, all of that, the deeper they understand what's behind the front end simplicity, those people are still very valuable. So simulation for robotics adds a lot of simplicity on the front end, but there's a lot in the back end that's happening that's very sophisticated.
Okay, so we should definitely pay more attention to that, and maybe create more roles, you know, in the market today, in order to help these people continue their journey, in order to jump into the robotics world as well.
There's tons of jobs open. It's ridiculous.
So right now it's the moment. It's a growing market. And any last advice that you can give to all of the engineers or young people listening to us right now?
I think, I have tons of advice.
Go ahead.
But actually, I'm going through a full-time job hunt right now, and I received my first offer a half hour before this meeting. So yeah, it could be very exciting, but I'm gonna, see everything that, comes through from all my interviews. At this point in my career, I'm noticing I'm in my late 30s. What really drives a career forward is choosing to care about something. It's a lot of people, I think, kind of wander through their careers and maybe want to work on an interesting problem, or maybe just want to go with the flow, and that'll work out. You'll probably have a nice career. But for me, my path here was very intentional because I chose to care about something, and sometimes that merited a full-time job. Sometimes that worked better as a consultant, but I had to choose. And so a year and a half ago, I chose that. I'm very interested in simulation. I didn't know anything about it. During my consulting, learned a lot about it, read more stuff, interviewed more people. And a year and a half later, I'm giving more talks about it and marketing it. So I'd say choose your why, choose your North Star, choose who you are in your career. And, you keep following that path. It might take a little while, but when it bursts, you're suddenly an expert, and it's an awesome feeling. But it's also, I do it because I want robotics to succeed. I'm just a vehicle for connecting people with technology.
Wow, really interesting, and congratulations on this new path that you're taking. Sounds really exciting, and I think that's a key, I mean, I've been talking with a lot of experts recently, and all of you guys have told me the same. You have to care in order to solve. And I think that's one of the most interesting part of manufacturing, robotics, these kind of jobs. I think that, yeah, first of all, most of us think that whenever you are applying to a job, or whenever you're in a company or working by yourself, you just have to get things done. But at the end of the day, you're just like, it's just like you're saying, you might get the job done, but if you do not care enough, then you're not going to have the same outcome. So
it's also, and being a leader, I think you can generate that within your company by caring. And that's what leadership is I'm going to walk into a room and say, I care about successful implementation of robotics and simulation. And all of a sudden I can have a whole company behind that mission, or really get my colleagues excited, or get a feature together that's super interesting to customers. So it's both enjoying work and finding purpose in it, but also generating the future is super exciting.
Generating the future. I think you said it all.
Yep.
Well, so thank you so much, Erin. Congratulations on this new path. Any social media handles where we can find you? I know that you mentioned you're a Twitter rock star, but maybe, I don't know, a personal page.
I think Robot Diva on Twitter. Go there first, and then that sends you to my LinkedIn. I just have LinkedIn right now set up. One thing about being between consulting and full-time roles is my online brand has shifted for the full-time job hunt, which is, of course, I'm thinking that way. So Robot Diva, you can find me there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, really interesting interviews just like this one with Erin directly on our website, ControlHub/Builder-Nation. We will love to hear from you. And once again, thank you so much, Erin, for your time. Hopefully, we'll get to hear from you soon.
Thank you.